Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining Black Tech Jobs for Coffee, Tech, and Opportunity. We've put together a great panel today. We look forward to bringing you the best of the best in both content and information, and creating a platform where you can ask questions, and that we will make ourselves available to answer those questions. A lot of things are going on in the world these days, across tech, across diversity, job seeking, unemployment. While we won't get to cover everything, we will cover many things. What I'm looking forward to is the team of folks who are going to be joining us to be able to deliver more. And without further ado, we're going to get started here in just a couple of minutes. I'm going to ask that you hold on. For those of you who are catching us live on YouTube, our show isn't scheduled to start for another couple of minutes, but we're going to bring on our guests. We're going to do quick introductions, open up the discussion about what we're doing with Coffee, Tech, and Opportunity, and why it's important now, especially as we think about COVID-19. We think about what's happened in Minnesota. We think about what's happening across the United States and globally as the protests continue to expand. And in technology and the way people go to work now, and how people of all backgrounds interact with each other, and how we can help not only heal our country, heal ourselves, and heal our workspaces, and to deliver better results for our customers, to deliver better technology, grow our careers, and reshape the way that America does what America does. And so I want to start by first introducing Jason Wayne. Jason is the CTO at Reverb, a hot tech company here in Chicago. They were recently acquired by Etsy. And Jason, he's new to Chicago, but I'm going to let him tell his own story. I'm going to bring Jason in now. Jason, welcome.
Thanks, Will.
Thanks for coming. I was just telling the audience a little bit about you, and pre-introducing you to the folks who are going to be joining us, and that you're new to Chicago, and that you're joining us from the East Coast, and you work for the amazing company called Reverb. I'm going to start and ask if you could just tell us a little bit about your background, a little about Reverb as well, since you've been in town for all of, is it 90 days yet?
Closer to 5 months. So
5 months. Okay,
I'm 5 months.
Good deal. Good deal.
Sure. So my name is Jason Wayne, as you mentioned, Will. I recently came to Chicago from New York, where I was working with Etsy. I had been there for about 7 years, and prior to that, I was actually on the West Coast. So I know I've seen the tech scenes on the East Coast, the West Coast, and the Midwest. And when I was at Etsy, I was leading our engineering teams, working on a pretty wide range of product areas, but most recently thinking about things like search and advertising. And when I joined Reverb, it was really exciting just to get to know another business and get to know the Chicago tech scene, and really dig in on some amazing, interesting problems. So super quick introduction of Reverb for those who don't know. We're a third-party marketplace for anyone from professional musicians to collectors, beginners, music shops to buy and sell music gear. We've really transformed from what started as a small team above a drum shop to a company that now supports people making their livings and really the livelihoods of many people. And that's been really stark in the last 90 days, just the impact we can have on people's lives. And we also have some fascinating technical challenges with the enormous catalog of music gear that we have, and just the nature of running a two-sided marketplace, and at scale with hundreds of thousands of buyers and sellers, just the challenges that come with being able to develop products that really have a lasting impact. So it's been really exciting to jump in, and I'm excited to share more with you all today.
Awesome. Thanks for being with us. We are going to next introduce our next guest, Andrew Watt, who comes to us from Relativity, amazing tech company also located here in Chicago. The work that they're doing with the legal field and data, but I don't want to share the entire story. I'm going to bring Andrew on and let Andrew tell you the story himself. Hi, Andrew.
Hey, Will. Hey, Jason. How are you both doing today?
Hi.
Doing great. Andrew, we were just doing a moderate job of introducing you and talking about your company, Relativity. Andrew is the CIO of Relativity and leads a strong team of developers and engineers who are making accessing data for those folks who are facing legal challenges or legal questions to gather faster and create stronger repositories and easier distribution models for that. So without me spilling out all the beans, Andrew, please tell us a little bit about yourself, a little bit about your company.
Sure, can do. Thanks, Will. So as Will said, I'm Andrew Watts. I'm the Chief Information Officer at Relativity. Relativity is a software company. We've been in business now for over a decade selling our product, also called Relativity. Relativity as a technology platform is an unstructured data management platform. As a business product today, it is an e-discovery platform. It provides end-to-end capabilities for corporations, law firms, and other types of organizations. A lot of pro bono cases run here. The government uses it for regulatory matters and things like that to go from understanding where and what the facts of a legal matter might be to understanding what has transpired when two parties are in dispute. We like to say that at Relativity, we're all about organizing data, discovering the truth, and acting on it. And those three catchphrases are a really good description of what the platform does. Really helps organize very large sets of data. You imagine Word documents, PDFs, emails, CAD drawings, and things like that can be incredibly difficult to manage and wade through. And we make that easier for people who are involved in those kind of matters. And we're slowly starting to use the product also for other things as well.
Awesome.
Thanks for having me today.
Glad to have you. Glad to have you both. So let's get to it. We try to keep Coffee Tech and Opportunity short. So that way we can let folks get back to work. And so, the world is changing so fast on so many levels. One of the things I wanted to talk about is kind of what we're doing. We're all working from home. And prior to us going live, we talked a little bit about some of our technical challenges, like many of our teams do. One of the things that I continue to hear technical folks and recruiters talk about is what happens post-COVID and how are you making the decisions to decide if you go back to the office, what that looks like, and are you considering work from home forever? And we'll start with Jason.
Sure.
Yeah, go ahead.
Happy to jump in on that. I think it's a really interesting question. I'll just say it's been a humbling and fascinating experience joining a leadership team in the time in the last few months when we've really jumped between numerous unprecedented events that have been top of mind for everyone. I would say we've learned a lot. I think first and foremost, we're prioritizing the health and safety of everyone on our team, as I think most businesses are. But we're also learning that our team is really capable of being very effective working remotely, and I think that's true of a lot of technical teams. That there's just a natural ability to really work remotely. But I will say I've always personally found a great deal of value in in-person collaboration, especially in the area of product development versus some other technical areas. And so while we've been very effective, I would say it's really difficult to foresee exactly how the current situation is going to progress. Of course, I think nobody really knows what things will look like. I would be hard pressed to say that we will end up in a position where we're going to go fully remote, because as I mentioned, we really see a lot of value in collaboration. But I also think it's unlikely that we will end up in a position where we're doing things exactly the same way as we've always done. And I think that's true. Really, like the nature of cities and the nature of companies is probably changing through this crisis. So we're being very deliberate about this decision, because this is not an easy one, and it's one where we want to understand what's best for our employees, what they want, how the situation has impacted their outlook on where they want to be over the long term, and really what's needed for us to run the business most effectively. But I think we're doing everything we can to learn about those things, and in the meantime, the thing we're trying to do is just give people clarity on what they can expect. So we've closed our offices at least for the summer, and have a commitment to regroup and identify a longer term plan over time.
Sure. And Andrew, how about you and your team? What are your thoughts about post-COVID, going back to work, what that might look like?
Yeah, similar to what Jason said, I think we're touching base with our employees to see where they're at and how this is affecting them. We obviously are prioritizing their safety and well-being as well. And one of the priorities we've had as a business is to make sure that part of that is to understand what the impact is on these various, what you would think of as categories of employees. So you've got parents who are currently looking after their children at home. You've got people who are solo at home. You have individuals who feel that the role that they have is something that fundamentally is easier to do when they can have in-person collaboration. And then there's those who feel like they can focus more when they don't have to actually interact as much as they might have to in the office. And so as we poll our employee base to see where they're at, we're trying to craft a long-term strategy that keeps all those things in mind. So recently, for example, we do have some employees who are telling us about maybe 10% of our workforce that they really are struggling at home, don't have enough space, or not space that's conducive to work, and would like to have some sort of office environment. With some people, they're telling us they've really gotten to love working from home. So I think that's near term and where we're at with some practical things. For the long term, I have no ability to read tea leaves any more than anybody else, but I would say this will dramatically change the way people work. I think for me, and in some of the discussions we had at Relativity, it's going to be a lot about the opportunity that it creates for people to make choices more often. So for example, even if you're someone who wants to work in the office 1 or 2 days a week, your alternate living location might change to another city. You might now choose to travel to wherever business is done instead of staying in a more expensive location. I think it's going to create a lot of mobility and a lot of options for people. And I think people are going to start to get used to how things are. They say it takes 21 days to build a habit, but I think it takes a few months to get comfortable with something. I think we're entering that 3-4 month phase right now. And I think it's going to be really interesting over the next month or two as some companies continue to work from home, if people are getting to that point of comfort and therefore this becomes the new normal, and they crave this ability or opportunity.
Got it. Andrew, do you think that work from home or the idea of work anywhere will change your capacity to recruit, especially across spectrums of diverse groups of employees? So if you were an organization that was headquartered in, say, Seattle, for example, where the Black population is less than 5% of the community there, does this allow you to broaden your view on where you can acquire talent? So you're in Chicago, so it's easier. It's 30% of the population, but it also expands you to go back to Jason's old stomping grounds in New York to acquire talent. Is that a part of your consideration set?
We've certainly talked about it. I think it's interesting, and some of the viewers may know this, but some may not. The regulatory world or the governmental environment around this doesn't necessarily make it easy for businesses. So Relativity is a Chicago headquartered company, grounded in Illinois, and there's only certain states right now that we can do business in. Otherwise, we have to take employees on as consultants. So just expanding that to the world we're now going to live in, I think that businesses like ours are probably going to think exactly the way you just said, Will, want to be able to employ people anywhere. And that's going to make us a more national and a more global company. And once that happens, the world is your oyster, so to speak. You can take in talent from just about anywhere if you get good at having a fully work from home or a fully remote workforce. And I think that's going to be the trick. I was just speaking to a colleague yesterday about whether you can really have a toe half in and half out. Right now, probably 10% of our workforce is fully work from home. The other 90% is, work from an office space. And we'd have to think about, can we work fully remote or do we need a mix? And if so, are we going to be good if we try to do a mix, or will we be better if we put our whole self into the work remote, work from home type of plan?
Got it. I'm going to shift gears and move away from working from remote. Both of your companies are culturally have great reputations as great places to work. I think about Jonathan Hill just made a comment, and I can't not talk about his program and the other programs that you have for apprenticeships, internships at Relativity, and the fellows program. Could you talk about some of the things you're doing to diversify your workforce and how you're investing in that, Andrew?
Yeah, I'm very happy to talk about fellows, and it's too bad we can't just zoom Jonathan here into the video, because he's obviously the better one to speak about it. But fellows is essentially a program we just launched. We announced it at Relativity Fest in October, where we're going to commit that after a period of 12 months of training that we will provide, that some class of people each year will graduate, and we will work to find them roles at Relativity, but more importantly, out in the community of companies that use our products. So it's essentially a training and education program that has a job finding component to it. And we've partnered with law firms, some of our partner type organizations who deploy our software or run our software for law firms and for corporations. And people are very excited about it. And one of the great things about it is not only does it take people in from communities that might otherwise not be served very well by this, but it also does so by connecting with other organizations like Year Up, or the types of organizations that exist. And so we're creating these connections and network effects that I think are phenomenal. I'm a personal fan of groups like Year Up, for example, and the fact that Relativity can connect with them in a more direct way than we did before. We used to take Year Up interns, but now we can connect in a more deliberate way and bring those folks into the community that we really love, which is the e-discovery and the legal community. It's just a great connection that creates this end-to-end process and sort of helps with opportunity is where it's at. And I think our Relativity employees really rally around getting on board and helping the folks who come in to fellows. It's a new program, but people are very excited about the impact it can have.
Awesome. Yeah, we're really excited, and we'll continue to amplify that. We think that just creates a great career path for early stage techies to build skill and find jobs, which is very often the disconnect for people in the earliest part of their career who go out on their own to acquire skills. And then there's a whole new set of skills required to get a job. Jason, I'm going to let you talk a little bit about culturally, about what's some of the cool things are happening at Reverb. But I want to pivot for just a second and talk a little bit about, in today's environment, there's the unemployment rate is huge, and arguably the way that data is captured and reported, it's even larger than most people understand. And then the subset of unemployed are the elongated underemployed, which creates a new set of challenges. Someone who's accumulated skills or accumulated the expense of accumulating those skills and now has an income that isn't commensurate with their background experience. So having said all of that, and we'll start with Jason, what advice would you give someone who's been displaced recently or furloughed as they go out and look for a new job in tech? Any ideas or tactics or things that you'd recommend or that you've seen work for you or other people that you've mentored in the past?
Yeah, it's tough. It's also it's really heartbreaking to see just the impact that COVID and the last 6 months have had on so many people. And of course, there is no magic bullet, but I do think this is a chance to kind of take stock of things and assess where we are. And for me, I think a couple of things stand out. One, being part of a company that is culturally aligned, values aligned with what you're looking for is enormously important. And I think a lot of people start their job search with kind of the specific role they're looking for. And my approach has always been to think more about the company and the kind of company I want to work for, and find my way in that way. And Reverb is a mission-driven organization. It is one where we are really excited that our business model aligns really well with the mission that we have of making the world more musical, and we are really directly contributing to people's livelihoods. And so for me, like, just identifying a company that really resonates with you is a step that I think is really powerful. I think also just the tech industry is an interesting one where it's unlike other roles where you're not entirely dependent on on someone from the outside giving you a shot. Of course, that eventually is what is needed, but there's a lot of opportunity for innovation, and there's so much change in the current industry. We talked about working from home and working remotely, that different opportunities to innovate and different opportunities really are arising, and tech is a unique industry to address some of those challenges. So those are the things that I keep in mind in a situation like this.
And Jason, there are a lot of firms who pause their hiring during this time. Jason, Reverb is turned hiring back on. Tell me a little bit about maybe a couple of roles that you're looking for right now. Are they in Chicago, or are they work remote roles? Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, and when I think back to where we were in March, we had a plan. The company is growing really well, and before any of this happened, we said we really need to meaningfully grow our team. And we came through March, and we were in a position where it was really hard to predict the financials of the business. We're really good at forecasting where the business is going to be, and we had wild swings every day, like probably almost every other business did. So we did slow down for a bit, but I think what we quickly learned was our business is really robust, in a lot of ways, more robust than many of our competitors, and we were able to really have really positive results through a very difficult stretch, and we're very fortunate for that. So we're going back to that commitment to really grow our team, and the growth is coming in a few areas. So first, kind of the core, I think the core engine of our building a better product is engineering and full stack engineering, and that is probably the discipline that we want to grow the most. But as a maturing organization, I think what we've really seen a lot of in the last 6 months, especially since I joined, one of my focuses has been rounding out the team with a greater focus on management. We want everyone to be supported by a manager who can help their growth and help create the structure that supports a really effective team. Product management and product design and user research, for example, are essential elements to building great products, and so those are where our key focuses are. As for location, I think this gets back to what we spoke about before. We haven't made a commitment one way or the other yet about if we are open to all roles being remote or not, but we do consider everything on a case-by-case basis, and certainly we've learned that people can be really effective. And the biggest thing for us is we want to understand if someone is joining our team, can they be effective in the role? Are they going to grow and learn? And can they be part of a really strong team? So totally echoing what Andrew said about one toe in. I think it's a real challenge when you have one person who's remote, maybe they're junior, surrounded by people who are more experienced and in an office together. That's a difficult circumstance for that person to learn. So we're really cognizant of what conditions we're bringing people into. And right now, this is a great learning opportunity, sort of in one day, just forcing our whole organization to work remotely. So we've learned a lot through that.
Awesome. And Andrew, how about you in your hiring? I mentioned earlier, just kind of recapping the question, there are a lot of companies, some of them went to layoffs. Other companies are in a stronger position and were prudent in pausing. Where are you in your journey? And if you are active again, where are you focusing your efforts on recruiting now?
Yeah, well, it's been a journey, I think, through the last 12 months. So we also paused hiring at one point, realizing that us and everybody else in the world was, lacking enough information to know what was going to happen for the long term. Just like Jason said, where would we be? How deep would any recession become? How well would our business do compared to the next business and the next business in an economy that was not doing so well? So we stopped hiring, froze it. We then looked at the answers to those questions. How is our business doing? How is our particular industry doing? We took that pause for, I would say, about 8 weeks, and then we're incrementally opening hiring back up again. So we've now allowed, for example, for backfills for people who have either left the company or where we had a little bit of some people before the freeze in critical roles. We've also opened up some critical roles again at this point, on top of backfilling some roles where we end up absent the right people. Whether we will, go back to, say, an original plan we had for 2020, I don't think that'll be the case at all. I think, any announcements that Relativity or anyone else made at the beginning of 2020 or before that are now completely subject to new planning, revised planning. So we're in the midst of that right now, which is looking at 2020 and what will be for the new 2020, not the 2020 that we all had planned. And I think those plans will include us reopening hiring. It'll just look quite different. So, for example, it won't just look different from the point of view of how many people. It'll look different from where we need them, what skills we need, because we're fundamentally probably going to be faced with new and interesting problems that our customers bring to us. Just in our case, for example, I think the world of e-discovery data is now going to be full of video conferences like this, or video conferences involving tools that really weren't that highly deployed before, like Zoom and Teams and so on. And so that's a new type of data set that we'll be looking to bring on board, and to fulfill the skills we'll need in video, for example, to bring that data set on board, we may need some different types of engineers and so on. I also think we've done some things that are not always called hiring, but we have continued with. So we did bring in an intern class this year, which includes some of the fellows folks, some of the year up folks and things like that, of over 50. So we didn't stop there. So when you think about hiring, of course, there's straight out, we created a job that's an enduring job, but there's also, the pathways you create into your company. And a lot of our interns become full-time Relativity employees, and a lot of them obviously go on to some of those other companies I mentioned. So there's a few different avenues there in our company of hiring types, so to speak. Last one I would just mention is, two others I would just quickly mention: international hiring and where we have that. And every market is different and coming out of COVID differently. And then finally, contractors and consultants, and even vendors who do work for us, and how many jobs we ultimately have the ability to create in those marketplaces as well.
Great. So for the audience, thanks again for joining us at Black Tech Jobs for Coffee, Tech, and Opportunity. I'm going to ask that you start to chat your questions now. I have about 1.5 questions that I'm going to contribute, and then we're going to turn it over to the audience because we really want to hear from you. We want to hear what's on your mind. We have 2 great tech leaders, brilliant gentlemen joining us, and I don't exaggerate that. And so please chat your questions. I want to circle back a little bit to kind of the other thing that's happening in the world that's affecting lots of employers, lots of employees, companies, just the country, and broadly as the discussion of race comes up. It's become it has always been a topic. It's become a bigger topic as recent events that have sparked out of Minnesota. And there's companies doing very brave things in response to that. Jason, I tried to meet with you on Friday, but I was glad to not meet with you. It's rare that I would say that, but the reason you did that, could you talk about the position that your company took, and why we weren't able to talk on Friday?
Yeah. So, this is, I think, in a lot of ways, a political or social moment of a generation, and it's something that is really top of mind for every one of our employees. And often when there's circumstances external to your business, you can come to work and say, "Great, I'm so happy we have this distraction, and I can come to work every day and not pay attention to what's going on in the outside world." But I think that was not where we were last week. This is not that kind of circumstance where we expect this to not be top of mind or not be the only thing that people are thinking about. And it was a really difficult week, and it was a time when our employees needed support. And so we did a few things. So first, we just wanted to understand the moment and where people were coming from. We started with compiling a list of resources for our team, including a partnership with Modern Health, and which is an emotional well-being platform, and really giving people a space to speak. Then we realized there was a lot more we needed to do. So on Friday, we gave the whole company the day off, really just to reflect and catch up after a really emotionally difficult week. And it was it was really powerful. I think it made a statement to the employees that we really care about this issue, and we really care about their well-being and their ability to participate in something that, again, is a generational, once in a generation kind of thing. But so that internal focus was the first thing, but then we also needed to understand kind of turning our focus externally. What do we need to do for our community, and to present the values of our organization externally. So we did a number of things, really all on this foundation of our values, and understanding the role that Black musicians and others have played in the growth of the industry. So first we made a statement. We posted on our blog our position of solidarity and where we felt the position we felt, which was aligned with our parent company Etsy's. We also made a donation to organizations that we thought were really well aligned with our view of the current circumstances, and wanted to make clear that we're not just going to make statements, but really take action in various places. So those organizations were Color of Change, Chicago Freedom School, and My Block, My Hood, My City. And it was really great to be able to contribute to those efforts. So this is, again, just to summarize, like a really complex issue that affects people in so many different ways, affects our business, our community, our users. And it's been great to be part of a team that is so thoughtful about every angle of this issue. So I'm really proud. Also, really proud that we were not able to meet on Friday, but glad we were able to catch up on Monday.
Awesome. And Andrew, your company's done, over the time that I've been associated or affiliated or have met so many dynamic people at your firm. Can you talk a little bit about how this has touched your firm, and how you and your team have supported the employees at Relativity, and how you guys are processing all of this?
Sure. And let me just first say it's been great just to sit and listen to Jason and what they're doing at Reverb. It's wonderful to see so many companies acting uniquely around their particular mission and what they can do for their employees. In our case, obviously started with our employees, and just like COVID-19, we wanted to check in with people and see how they were doing, see how they're impacted, see what they needed, and so on, and ensure their safety and well-being. I would say across a few different dimensions, that became fairly clear to all of us as employees, and especially our leadership team, in three ways that I'll mention at least. The first one was through our internal communities, so to speak. So, we use technologies where people are either chatting or sharing insights and things like that, like everybody does. And there we had a significant number of our employees offer their real experiences and what it's really like to live a life that is right in the space that this particular moment is all about. I thought that there was some incredible stories, some amazing sharing of really deep personal things that some of our employees did. And I, for one, was very grateful to learn and hear about what it was that they were offering from their life, but also incredibly, stunned and taken aback by some of what I heard. And I think this, as a learning moment for those of us who are not the direct impacted folks, we're not in the sort of community that is targeted or has the prejudice against us and things like that. Whilst many of us would have thought we knew some of these things and had heard them before, I think that there is a difference in this particular moment. I don't know that it's down to the individual man of George Floyd, but the moment that it's created for sure has become a point where people are definitely willing to share out a lot more. So that was one avenue. Second avenue was in regards to the rest of our employee base and this need or feeling, I think, of wanting to be action focused. What can we do? What can we do right now for our fellow employees? What can we do as a company? What do we already do that sort of, it's almost like the rally around and everybody wants to do something, and then you look at what you're already doing. And so our Relativity Gives program is already heavily involved with underprivileged communities, CPS schools, and things like that. And I think recommitting to those was important. But we actually have an ongoing journey internally inside the company right now to think about what more can we do and where in the areas of both social justice, which I think is something that we were already involved in, but also potentially racial justice. And not to queue up anything here, but Jonathan and others who are here, offering ideas around what organizations could benefit from that and how we could use our technology to do that. And then finally, I think with regards to taking the time to, like Jason said, put a message out to the world at large, including the community that we're a part of, the industry that we're a part of, that we stand with our African American colleagues and we care about this issue and that it's important and that we're not going to forget about it, as has frankly happened so many times before. And I'm just seeing the chat here a little bit. Corey, another one of our Relativity employees, is just making a nice mention there of our what we call our BREL community, which is our Blacks at Relativity community, and you can learn more about it there in terms of our inclusion programs that we have. That's one of our community resource groups who are in our company are just phenomenal. And Corey's one of our wonderful employees who participates in that community a lot and shared stories from his background as part of those avenues that I was talking about.
Good deal. So there's so thank you, Corey, and thank you, Andrew and Jason for both of those answers. I will tell you, anyone who's listening, I had no conversation with these gentlemen before. I have experience and exposure to their companies and other employees who work there, and we have a wide open discussion. And their answers are their answers. If you've ever come to a Black Tech Jobs event before, you recognize that we don't, quite frankly, put together a panel of Black folks to talk to a group of Black folks. Our goal is to bring together people who wouldn't otherwise have an opportunity to connect, because we really believe that the process forward will come from an intersection of different types of people from different ethnic, age, gender identification backgrounds, and collectively advance the cause for Blacks in technology who continue to struggle to find places in technology and to elevate careers. And so if you are now actively looking, give Relatively a look, give Reverb a look, visit us at blacktechjobs.com. We have thousands of jobs listed all over the country. And for those of you who do want to be work from home folks, those options are out there too. We're also seeing an aggressive move for historically or let's say predominantly Black owned companies who are wanting to make investments who've also struggled to find Black tech talent. And so we continue to hear discussions about pipeline and access, and we want to be able to be that conduit that provides both access and connections. We think that continues to be a struggle, and I'll throw this to both Jason and Andrew. What our research has taught us is that most people find their way to a job of any sort, of any vocation, through their professional and personal networks. And without those connections to people who don't look like you, it's difficult to have that intersection happen. And so I'll ask Jason and Andrew about their operations. They're not recruiters, of course, but they benefit from the work that their hardworking recruiting teams do. And shout out to the corporate recruiters who are doing their best. But many times they're faced with two scenarios: a applicant pool and an applicant tracking system, or internal referrals from someone that's admired and respected for their work. How are you balancing your internal referrals, which are a hugely valuable asset for any company, with other applicants that may be in the pool to provide a mix of candidates for consideration? Jason, I know you're new. Can you talk either about what you're doing now or what you've done in the past?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question. I think the nature of recruiting has evolved a lot in the years since I've been actively hiring folks, and went from a period when I think most of the people we hired came from just, they would come in and apply to your business and say, hey, I want to work there. And it shifted a lot, especially with more experienced folks, to many people know that they'll get recruiters contacting them every week, and when they want a job, they can kind of go and get it.
Uh-oh. And Jason, I think, froze up on us. I'm going to pivot. Andrew, Yeah, I'm gonna point Jason out for a second so we can work on his technical difficulties. Andrew, could you talk a little bit about what you're doing there?
Sure. So I think Relativity's had a long standing program around diversity and inclusion, but in the last, I would say, 12 to 18 months, we've infused that program with new education and training for our employees, new talent to help lead the program. Our community resource groups have been really flourishing in the last 18 months. And one of the things we talk about a lot that is a component of inclusion and diversity is the value of our talent growing over time as it becomes more diverse. And so, to your point, Will, if everybody in a company looks the same and has the same network, you're not necessarily going to have an easy time opening up the diversity of your company. So we've been doing some of the things that businesses do, I think, well. So we're starting to measure, like, where are we really at? What does our talent pool really look like? How much diversity do we really have? And measurement, I think, is the first step in shining a light on where you're really at. The second thing we've been doing is actively starting to think about measures or thresholds or targets that we can look at. And they're not necessarily about specific year-on-year type of targets. They're more about getting the right people in the company to think about the value that we all will obtain through increased diversity. So, for example, at the same time as you might have a problem with tapping your internal network because of a lack of, say, access to people who are African American or whatever particular group you may want to infuse more talent from, you've also sometimes got problems with managers who leave it up to the talent acquisition team to do the recruiting. What we're working on is partnership amongst everybody. So whether that's the people in our community resource groups, working with our managers and working with our talent acquisition team to create kind of network effects, and then working with folks such as yourself, for example, or doing events like this to create connections, make sure that we know who's out there, make sure that we're meeting those people, make sure we're spending more time in communities that might be otherwise not available to us. And I think it's playing a role for us right now, and we're looking to see where we have success with that and where we don't, so that we can lean in more to the areas that we're not having success with it. We'd all like it to be more than it is today. And I think that we're going to see the fruits of our labor. I'm a big believer in that. When Relativity puts its mind to things like this, it tends to succeed. But it's time will tell. Our investments are new and fresh in this past 12 months. And I think a lot of those will take a little bit longer to come to fruition. But things like fellows have spawned because of it. Our community resource groups, like I said, are flourishing. And so, we're in early stage of seeing where some of this will go. Will, I think you might be muted.
I apologize. I was. Thank you. Thank you, Andrew. Jason, welcome back. You were finishing your comment, and then we'll close out our broadcast.
Yeah, my apologies. We talked about power issues before, and somehow I had one at a very inopportune time. So, I was just saying, we're learning a lot and about the nature of how people are finding their jobs, and I think what is most important from the angle of diversity and inclusion when we talk about sourcing and referrals and everything is really this internalization by your whole company about the value and the goals of your diversity and inclusion efforts. And by that I mean you can't have one or two people at the top who are responsible for a diversity and inclusion issue, or even worse, one or two people not at the top who care about diversity and inclusion. It really has to be something your whole company is bought into. And at Reverb, we are part of a parent organization, Etsy, that I think is really a world-class organization as far as the way to approach diversity and inclusion. And I've fortunately been able to be a part of that effort at Etsy, and have been able to participate in bringing that forward at Reverb as well. And the elements there of having true social impact goals and impact goals that you commit to, publicize, and incorporate into the actual work and targets that you set within your business is absolutely essential. And so we make that a real focus of ours. And I think if you don't have an honest assessment of where you are, I think this is what Andrew was referring to when I joined, but if you don't have an honest and sober assessment of where you are and a real commitment to a particular target or outcome that you're hoping to achieve, you're never going to get there. So just, this is not a challenge that is going to get better by lip service or by, again, one or two people saying this is a thing I care about. It's an organization-wide commitment, and something that is a commitment over the long term, not just one day or 1 month or this quarter. It's our time to think about diversity and inclusion. That is not the case. And finally, I just want to say that I think what's hugely important is that everyone understands not that just it's important because you value it, but it's also important because it makes you a better company and gives you better outcomes in whatever goals you're seeking otherwise. And that is a thing that I think we've made a great point of emphasizing, and I think we have that organization-wide commitment as well, and it's been hugely powerful.
Thank you, Jason. Thank you, Andrew. Thank you to all of our guests who have joined us today for Coffee, Tech, and Opportunity. The team at Black Tech Jobs and I really appreciate you joining us for this segment where we feature tech leaders. This has been a great talk. I've enjoyed our conversation. I wish we had more questions, but I think that your inputs and outputs were so valued that you covered a lot of things that I think people wanted to learn more about. And for those who want to watch it again, we'll be publishing the replay on LinkedIn and on our other social media platforms. Thanks again, gentlemen. Have a great afternoon. Thanks, everyone who joined us today. Bye now.
Thanks so much, Will. Nice to meet you, Jason. Bye-bye.
You too.